The Xbox 360 has over 100 console-exclusive games, many of which have not been ported to PC or included in their backwards compatibility program for the series line of consoles. With over 2,100 titles released on the platform, there's something on here for just about everyone. The Xbox 360 ushered in a new way of tracking your merit as a gamer, with achievements. What I like most about achievements isn't collecting points, it's the challenges associated with earning them. Oftentimes, games will require the player to try out harder difficulties, discover all the secrets, or otherwise try out games you'd likely skip in order to boost your gamer score. Achievement hunting got me to try games outside of my comfort zone, and I'll always be thankful for that. The Xbox 360 got patched to be backwards compatible with 463 Xbox original games. Not the entire library, just about half of all the titles, but that's still a respectable amount nonetheless. Keep in mind, this is software-based emulation, so you're going to encounter the odd glitch or two in your favorite OG Xbox games. I'll take glitchy emulation over no emulation at all. When you purchase an Xbox 360 game, there's a chance you'll be able to carry it with you across to the Xbox One or Series line of consoles. Over 600 Xbox 360 games have been added to the backwards compatibility program. 360 games adapted for Series X boast better performance, higher quality graphics, faster loading time, and in some cases were patched to have higher frame rates. With cloud saves, you can carry all your progress with you from your Xbox 360 over to the newer platforms of your choice. The forwards compatibility keeps 360 games in my regular rotation. Back in its heyday, the Xbox 360 was a treasure trove of indie titles. Games like Fez, Super Meat Boy, and Braid got their start on the Xbox platform. Not to mention, Microsoft put out their XNA Game Studio, which allowed just about anyone to create a game and publish it on the Xbox Live Marketplace. Many of your favorite developers got their start here. Some early models of the Xbox 360 were prone to system failure, notably the Red Ring of Death. It happened to my launch model 4 times, and I lost all my save data during the process. To Microsoft's credit, they tried to make good on this and sent out a bunch of Xbox coffins to replace faulty systems at the time, but now these launch models are well out of warranty. It's best to just avoid these entirely. In a vain attempt to prevent hacking, Microsoft forced players to buy proprietary hard drives if they wanted to expand their storage or take advantage of backwards compatibility. It didn't work, the system was hacked, and they had to course correct later on. As an avid importer of games, I would have to do a little homework before I risked importing a title with region lock. There's not much documentation on what is or isn't region locked on the system, so trying to dig out that Xbox 360 gem left in Japan might be a fruitless affair if your system isn't hacked. Many Xbox 360 games were released in a digital-only format, and due to the loss of licenses or other factors, some games were delisted from the store. Speaking of, the entirety of the XNA game collection were removed from the store, with some of those games never getting ported to another platform or PC. Just gone forever. There are many games on the Xbox store that are at risk of being delisted with no physical copy to preserve the game. The Xbox 360 went from having one of the coolest user interfaces with the classic blade setup to a soulless avatar liminal space land. In the tail end of the 360's run, Microsoft redesigned the UI several times to incorporate more ads, more paid avatar accessories, and attempted to family-friendly up the UI. It's ugly and square, and I don't like it. Here's an easy one. Just buy an external USB hard drive. This gives you additional storage without the hassle of having to hunt down proprietary hard drives. You can format it and store up to 2 terabytes of data per drive. This is the Cronus Max. You can use it on PS3 or 360 to convert your new controllers to work on old systems. Now, I love my wired Xbox 360 controller, but it's really showing its age. With the Cronus Max, you can program your Xbox One controllers to work on the 360 and not have to worry about hunting down new old stock of 360 controllers. Love it or hate it, the Kinect is the only way to access the Xbox 360's Kinect exclusive library. Most all the Kinect games were left on the Xbox 360, and the Kinect 1.0 is incompatible with other Xbox consoles. The Kinect adds some bonus functionality to a lot of Kinect optional games, like gestures or voice commands. Here in Dead Space 3, you can navigate the menus by just shouting at your Kinect, if you want to do that. By the way, you can buy a zoom lens for the Kinect if you have a small space to play in. There are a variety of different mods and homebrew available to the Xbox 360 if you want to go down that rabbit hole. I physically modded the case, the face plates, and the fan of my original Xbox 360 just for fun. But you can also get your Xbox JTagged or RGH modded to allow for custom firmware, which opens up your Xbox 360 to a world of homebrew. For example, you can play games from any region, you can play backup discs, or install content directly to your hard drive and have your whole library on one system. You can also install delisted content and even whitelist Xbox original games that were not included in the backwards compatibility program. Now, modding a 360 is not an easy affair, and I would just recommend buying it pre-modded if you're a beginner out there. I bought mine pre-modded for $100, and I feel I got my money's worth. Without further interruption, let's celebrate and talk some games. Doritos Crash Course. Don't turn off the video, I'm serious about this. Developed by Wanako Games and published by Microsoft Game Studios in December of 2010. It was once available on Windows 8, but it's been delisted, so it is an exclusive to the Xbox series of consoles and has been made backwards compatible with the series line. I'm including this because it's a free game that anyone can download, and I have a thing for product placement themed video games. It's not going to be the only one featured in this video. Now, for a game with Doritos in the title, it's not a prevalent thing featured within the game. You can't just eat a bunch of Doritos and use them as a power-up or anything like that. It's just mostly a couple of billboards here and there. The protagonist is your Xbox avatar, and it's an obstacle course game show in the theme of Ninja Warrior. That's what makes it fun. You're in a race against time to get to the end of the level, and you jump and swing your way across all sorts of obstacles to try and get the best time, which you can then compare against other Xbox players, notably your friends, which is the great thing about the 360. It isn't beating the games, it's showing everyone online that you did. People have trashed on this game due to its association with Doritos in the past, but I believe they didn't even give it a shot. It's a simple 2D runner that is a fun and tested formula for gameplay, and considering that the game's been downloaded over 1.4 million times, there's gotta be somebody out there that also agrees with me. It's a free game. What have you got to lose but your time? Dead Rising K0, developed by Blue Castle Games and published by Capcom in 2010. This was an Xbox 360 exclusive prequel to Dead Rising 2 that's currently backwards compatible on the series line. K0 belongs to a category of games that many would refer to as a paid demo. It's a small vertical slice of Dead Rising 2's gameplay and story, just enough to tide players over until the full game released a month later in September of 2010. I just consider this to be the prologue of motocross star Chuck Green's dad quest to scrounge up thousands of dollars to pay for his daughter Katie's expensive Zombrex treatments. An American tale if there ever was one. Gotcha. The Green family is holding up in an abandoned gas station in this pit stop town called Still Creek, which is currently in the midst of a zombie outbreak. There are two main objectives here. One, periodically Chuck has to find and administer Zombrex to Katie, otherwise she'll turn into a zombie. And two, Chuck has to find pieces of a motorcycle so he can weld them together and escape Still Creek with Katie.
Can you fix the motor? motorbike, Daddy?
Daddy can fix anything.
Case Zero is rather limited in scale. You can only explore a few odd buildings, and the side quests are limited to just a few escort missions or your standard fare courier stuff. I did appreciate how they implemented an economy system where you could just pilfer all the slot machines in town and exchange the money for goods in the town's lone pawn shop. It's a good way to pick up a quick Zombrex for Katie early on, so you can continue on with your side quests. The Dead Rising series has been known for its divisive ticking clock mechanic, which creates a sense of urgency to complete all the objectives in time or face a bad ending. The urgency here is emphasized a tad more than usual, with Chuck's daughter being thrown into the formula. Blue Castle also added a particularly despicable child-killing psychopath midway through to ratchet up the pressure.
Zombies are good hunting, son. Kinda like shooting people, but without all the legal hassle.
Whoa, listen. She's not a zombie. She's just a little girl.
Oh, I seen you give her that shot. She's a zombie, all right. Come on now. Step aside and let old Jed finish the job.
Now, in Case Zero, Chuck is level capped to a max of 5 levels, but your levels and combo cards you unlock will transfer over to the main Dead Rising 2. So, is Dead Rising Case Zero worth checking out? Probably not for most people, but if you're a true Dead Rising fan, it's not half bad.
Hell yes!
Right on.
In December of 2010, Capcom released Dead Rising 2 Case West. This is still an exclusive for the Xbox line of consoles, and it's been made backwards compatible with the series line. In terms of content value, this one is far more worth the price tag than Case Zero. In Dead Rising Case West, series protagonist Frank West returns as a playable character in tandem with Chuck Green. The boys team up to investigate the creators of the Zombrex vaccine, Phenotrans. They meet up at one of their facilities just outside of Fortune City, and together they're gonna expose the zombie conspiracy through some good old-fashioned photojournalism.
Nice investigative work, Frank. Just drop it, Chuck. Get your ass out of my face. Back up. You're too close. I said drop it. Consider it dropped. Well, at least it was a soft landing.
Now this time around, players have the option to play the game solo as Chuck Green, with Frank serving as an AI companion, or they can take the game online for a cooperative campaign where players can play as either Chuck or Frank. By the way, you can only play as Frank West online, which was a bizarre choice. Case West might have to be the blandest environment to explore in the entire series, as you're limited to just the Phenotrans facility, which is mostly comprised of lab equipment, scaffolding, and living quarters. For what it's worth, Blue Castle did add some new enemies like these super pissed off zombies, zombie wranglers, and a fun psychopath fight at the end to round things off. They also threw in some interesting new weapons to craft, like this mechanized fist with pistons built into it's pretty cool. The most welcome feature to Case West is the elimination of having to escort survivors. All you have to do is fulfill the survivors' objectives, and then they'll just see themselves to safety. No escorts necessary. The story here does some excellent work to bridge the gaps between Dead Rising 1 and 2 by having some old faces show up, and it does set the stage for Dead Rising 3. What shocks me is that there's some critical revelations made in this plot, so it's kind of a tad shady for Capcom to omit these story bits from the main Dead Rising 2, or at the very least, release this game on other platforms. They recently had a Dead Rising 2 remaster, but Case West and Case Zero were not included. It's Capcom, what can you do? If you're looking for a short but worthwhile Dead Rising tale to experience with a friend, pick this up on sale. Hopefully, this doesn't get delisted, but you better get it just in case.
Where the hell is this guy? You know, you're a little high-strung for a guy who's covered wars.
If you know anything about this channel, you knew this was coming. Deadly Premonition was developed by Access Games in 2010, and I'm happy to share that Deadly Premonition is also backwards compatible on the series line, which takes the best Xbox 360 exclusive and makes it a tad better. Yes, I still consider DP to be an exclusive to this platform because each new revision or port of the original Deadly Premonition did something to break the game engine, alter the storyline, or compromise the atmosphere, and you don't want that happening because Deadly Premonition is all about the bizarre atmosphere.
I have to warn you though, I am very particular about my coffee.
This is an open-world murder mystery that is one part survival horror and one part mundane country town living, mashed together in a comedic Twin Peaks facsimile, starring gaming's most likable protagonist, FBI Special Agent Francis York Morgan, but just call him York, that's what everybody calls him.
I used to dress like a hardcore punk rocker when I was in high school.
I could go on for hours about how unfairly this game was characterized by the gaming media, and I have, but all you need to know is beneath the silly exterior, there's a heart to this game. You get to do things like listen in on conversations about B horror films like Tremors, or hear stories about the disturbing crime scenes that York has encountered in his FBI career. And then food talk. It's not a sweary game without food talk in it. Now, from the surface, it may present itself as a low-budget, by-the-numbers Resident Evil 4 clone, but DP is defined by the moments where it takes a drastic veer outside the lines into surreal and often disturbing territory. If you take the time to invest yourself in the world of Greenvale, and take in all the little details, do some actual investigating by talking to all the citizens and taking on all the side quests, you're gonna walk away loving this game. It has one of the best final acts of any video game I've ever played. If you want to play the game in its most stable and intended form, then you owe it to yourself to pick up Deadly Premonition on the Xbox 360 or series line of consoles. There's a feature-length retrospective on Deadly Premonition as part of my Sweary File series on the channel if you want to know why the 360 version remains the best way to play. Highest recommendation possible.
George, do you work out every day?
Of course, Agent Morgan. Exercise keeps me healthy. I haven't missed a day since I started in high school.
Now that's impressive. Remind me to get more exercise, Zach.
I can't do my full routine today without Arnold. I haven't seen Arnold around since yesterday.
Arnold.
He's a training buddy of mine. His partner Sylvester misses him too. If you see Arnold around, let me know, will ya? Can't finish my workout menu without him.
Okay. I'll keep an eye out for him.
Blue Dragon was developed by Mistwalker in 2006. It's still an Xbox exclusive title, but it is backwards compatible with the series line. A relative dream team of important players created this Japanese RPG. Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy, was the director. Akira Toriyama was the designer of Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest, and he stood in as the lead art director here. And Earthbound Papa himself, Umatsu, composer of most all the mainline Final Fantasy titles, handled the music here. Blue Dragon stars this little guy named Shu, who with the help of his friends is trying to protect his town from the threat of a monster known as the Land Shark. After attempting to thwart the shark's rampage, the friends discover the shark is actually a flying machine that takes them up to a giant skyship which belongs to the evil Nin. Unfortunately, the party is no match against Nin or his League of Robots. But before they're killed, a mysterious voice tells the team to swallow these magical spheres, which grant them all the power to summon giant shadow creatures, notably the titular Blue Dragon. This is where the game starts.
What's going on?
Hey, weird voice! Tell us what's happening
happening here?
It's a traditional style turn-based RPG, where each character can assume a job class, and it allows the player to cater the party to their own preferences. It's not an incredibly complex JRPG, and it pretty much follows the Pokemon elemental weaknesses when it comes to the battles. The cool thing is, all the enemies roam the field, so you have the opportunity to do a sneak attack. I like how this robotic voice tells you if the enemy detects you.
Detected.
You're encouraged to group enemies together at a time, which in some cases causes the enemies to attack one another. So there is an element of strategy to your engagement. The maps are also filled with a ton of collectible materials and objects that you can either search or interact with to uncover hidden treasures or create new pathways. One thing I don't like about this, there are some notoriously difficult QTEs that appear in cutscenes that require an insane amount of button mashing. There's one early on that most people will probably fail. Not a fan of these. For whatever reason, they hired the lead singer of Deep Purple to sing the cheesiest lyrics of all time for the boss battle themes, and I always look forward to listening and singing along to it. Blue Dragon is a cute RPG, but not one that has ever held my attention long enough to complete all 3 discs. It's a long game, but not a bad one per se. It's just a tad blander than most RPGs you'll find on the platform. It's always on sale and definitely worth adding to your collection if you're looking for a chill RPG that you can turn your brain off and grind to. This is Rise of Nightmares, developed by Sega and released in 2011. Rise of Nightmares is a Kinect exclusive video game as notated by the purple box. It's not backwards compatible and you can only play it on the 360. Rise of Nightmares is a first-person survival horror game that feels a bit more in line with the House of the Dead series, and it might be a little too ambitious for its own good. I will say that I have a love-hate relationship with Rise of Nightmares. It did not leave a positive first impression with me, but in its defense, I became a little too frustrated and didn't really bother to learn how to play the game properly. The biggest complaint I had with the game the first time I played it was you have to put one foot in front of you in order to propel the character forward, and you have to pivot your hips in the real world to turn the camera. And I feel the game would have greatly benefited from being more on rails and arcadey like House of the Dead. After giving it another chance and bothering to learn how the game plays, it's still not great, but it's not as bad as I once thought it was. So in Rise of Nightmares, you take on the role of a couple of different protagonists throughout. You're trapped in a Romanian mad scientist dungeon filled with the undead, and you use various different objects you find on the ground to take apart each one of these twisted creations. Each one of the monsters in the game has a piece of armor, so you have to kind of attack the opposite side of them and take them apart limb by limb. The game is a survival horror, so you are going to be meandering room by room looking for a key and then slowly pivoting your body around 180 degrees to then open doors with said key and eventually find your wife and save the day. Rise of Nightmares does not leave a good first impression. In fact, it takes quite a while for the game to suddenly pick up and a lot more action to happen, and I feel this might turn some players off. Once you get into the train segment and you start wandering around the cars and interacting with people and finding hidden audio cassette tapes and really soaking in the Romanian atmosphere, you might find yourself getting invested. Now, as you would expect with most Kinect games, it is laden with QTEs. NPCs, and they do pantomime what gesture you're supposed to perform in order to not die. One thing I will stress, if you want to get good at Rise of Nightmares, you kind of have to be a bit more dramatic with your movements, like wide swipes, and perform just big gestures in order for the Kinect sensor to truly understand what you're trying to do. Once I decided to let loose and just flail my arms around, suddenly I was halfway through the story with very little trouble after I started to understand what they were going for. The combat in Rise of Nightmares is a mixed bag. There are some weapons which are much more fun to perform the gestures than others. Personally, I like the brass knuckles so I can just punch everything in sight without having to wildly flail my arms. But you get other things too, like a chainsaw or some projectiles that you can throw at the enemies. If you're gonna pick up a Kinect game and you don't mind standing for very long periods of time without a break, I mean, these levels just keep going on, and you want a game that is far different from the rest of the Kinect library, then yeah, check out Rise of Nightmares. It's fairly cheap to pick up, and it's a nice little novelty to try out one time in your life. And who knows, after this video, I might go back and finish it.
The forests here are deeper and darker than even the Black Forest in Germany. This oppressive place has a cursed history of misery and bloodshed. If it weren't out of necessity, work in my case, no one would choose to visit such a forbidding land. Find a man who suddenly went...
This is NeverDead, put out by Konami and developed by Rebellion in 2012. NeverDead is the story about Bryce Boltzmann. He started things out as a typical pretty boy Final Fantasy JRPG protagonist who was cursed by his enemies with immortality. The bulk of the game takes place in the future where Bryce is now a jaded, bitter alcoholic who's seen better days. The core of the gameplay is centered around Bryce's immortality, and it's introduced in some of the most comedic and interesting fashions that I've ever seen dealing with this concept.
Oh, damn! Three-pointer!
Bryce is a part of an anti-demon agency, and in order to make a living and sustain his addiction, Bryce and his partner Arcadia take on various missions where demons are sighted out in the world. The game is all about destruction of both the environment and of the protagonist. Rebellion were known for the Sniper Elite series, so they're no strangers to weird physics and destruction, and that's where this game excels. As Bryce, you can shoot and destroy pretty much all the environment in the game. You can use it as traps to crush enemies. Bryce also has a signature butterfly blade, which is completely mapped to the right analog stick, where the player can one-to-one swipe by flicking the analog stick. The crux of the gameplay is centered around knowing your enemy's weaknesses and choosing the correct weapon or environmental trap to fit the situation. Now, this game was panned almost across the board because the reviewers at the time hated the limb system. You see, if you don't dodge during combat, occasionally Bryce will be torn to pieces limb by limb until he's just a head rolling across the floor. In these situations, you can either dodge roll over your fallen limb to reattach it to Bryce, or if you're a head rolling on the floor, you gotta find your torso and hop back onto it before you're swallowed whole by one of the grandbabies. That's the fail state in this game. Bryce also has a meter where he can completely regenerate all of his limbs by clicking in a stick. You can just regen on the fly or grab some of this snake juice and regen. You get a ton of unlockable perks, so you can cater the gameplay style to your preference. If you find yourself liking swords, you can boost up your swords, or same thing with the guns. You can make it to wherever Bryce regens faster, crawls faster, rolls faster, and the best part is all the experience points that you earn throughout the game carry over with you across your save file so you can just start over a level if you're having trouble and unlock all the perks that you need to carry you forward. Everyone who dogged on this game, I guarantee, did not bother to learn the unique mechanics. And that's what we got here. We got a game that really went out on a limb and tried to make the concept of immortality goofy yet engaging. There's some extremely clever puzzles later on in NeverDead that I don't want to spoil, but it really does take advantage of all the loose limbs and ripping off your head and throwing it, or ripping off an arm and using it as a grenade. It is just so wild and fun. And it's sad that we'll never see anything like this coming out of Konami again. This is unfortunately trapped to the 7th generation of consoles, and it will most likely never see a re-release. So if you're gonna play NeverDead, play it on the Xbox 360. Out of the two systems that it appeared on, the 360 is more capable of handling all the chaos of the environmental damage without the massive screen tearing found on the PS3, and for the most part it maintains a stable frame rate. It's sad that Microsoft did not make this a backwards compatible title on the series of consoles, because it could have really benefited from it, and I think over time people are starting to warm up to NeverDead. And if you want to watch an entire in-depth retrospective on it, I have one on my channel. I love this game. Megadeth did the soundtrack. If you want a third-person action shooter unlike anything you've ever played before, take the time to try out NeverDead. Learn the mechanics. Pay attention to the tutorial. High recommendation.
Walking a crooked path, the witness will rise.
Beautiful Katamari, put out by Namco in 2007. This title is still an exclusive to the Xbox line of consoles, and it's now backwards compatible with the series line. If you've never played a Katamari game before, then I've got my work cut out for me trying to explain what this is all about. So essentially, there's this guy called the King of all Cosmos who does something to destroy a part of the universe, and you, as his son, the Prince of all Cosmos, have to use this gravitational ball called a Katamari to roll up a bunch of junk and create brand new planetoids to repair all the stuff your daddy broke. The Katamari you start out with is of a certain size, and you can only pick up objects of equal or lesser size than your Katamari. And in order to roll up bigger things, well, you have to gather a bunch of junk to raise the size of your Katamari so you can continue on with your rollin' journey. Beautiful Katamari was this series' first step into the HD generation, and with the power and visual fidelity of the Xbox 360, Katamari never looked better up until this point. You're rolling up everything in sight. That's the fun of Katamari. You never know what you're gonna roll up next, and there's a whole entire encyclopedia of things that you've rolled up, and it'll take you a long time to reach 100% of all the items rolled up. You can even roll up an Xbox 360 and controllers. It's kind of cool. Beautiful Katamari was originally in development for both the PS3 and the Wii, and at some point they wanted to make it a Kinect exclusive Katamari game, and I'm so glad they did not do that. All you need to enjoy this game are 2 good analog sticks, and that's it. Keep it simple, and that's what Katamari is all about. Simple gameplay, max fun factor, and a hypnotic soundtrack that is truly the essence of the entire series. Beautiful Katamari runs at an unlocked frame rate, so you'll often see the game start to dip if you are playing on an Xbox 360. However, the game has been made backwards compatible for the series line of consoles, which allows it to maintain a stable 60 frames per second, so your mileage may vary if you're playing on a 360 versus a series console. Regardless, if you buy the disc on the 360 and eventually get a Series X, you'll be able to play it on there. This game is still exclusive to the Xbox line of consoles, and even though Kaida Takahashi had nothing to do with this one, it still ends up being a wonderful time and a concept that anyone can get behind. Check this one out. Tornado Outbreak, developed by Loose Cannon Studios and published by Konami in 2009. This game is exclusive to the 7th generation of consoles, has not been ported to PC, and the 360 version is the best way to play. Tornado Outbreak is sort of on the flip side of Katamari Damacy. You play as Zephyr, a living tornado who has to destroy most of the world in order to save it. The gist of the gameplay is you go through town as a tiny little tornado, and the more destruction you cause and things you suck up into the swirling vortex, the larger Zephyr becomes. Depending on the size of your tornado determines what you can suck up into it on the stage. The goal for most levels is to collect a certain number of fire flyers, which you want to try and bank together in kind of a combo string to get the max amount of points. Now, for a low-budget, white trash kid, westernized abomination form of Katamari Damacy, I've got a soft spot for the ambition of this game. Each level introduces some new abilities to test out or sub-objectives to accomplish, and they tried to make some boss fights in here. They're not the greatest, but there's something. Now, as a person who grew up in Tornado Alley, I should find this offensive, but I don't. It was a game that always fascinated me, and once I sat down to play it, I had a blast. This is a game you probably won't find on most Xbox lists, but you're gonna find it here. Tornado Outbreak is kid presenting, but there is an adult complexity to trying to get your tornado combo even higher. It's a little rough around the edges and totally not optimized for any system that you're playing it on, but its charm and addicting gameplay do all the heavy lifting here. Check it out. Child of Eden was developed by Q Entertainment and released in 2011. It still hasn't been released for the PC, but it is backwards compatible with the series line of Xbox consoles. This is a musical-based rail shooter and a gorgeous visual showcase. It was created by Tetsuya Mizuguchi, who created Rez and later went on to make the Tetris Effect. If you've played either of those titles, you'll come to expect higher than average quality on both the visual and auditory fronts. Now, this isn't a particularly narrative-driven game, but the condensed version of events is that you're an antivirus program that's trying to save the memories of the space person named Lumi, this floating woman over here. Now, the experience is similar to Rez, where you lock onto various targets and then release an attack and try to take them all out in a string combo to increase your score. Enemies can also fire back with purple-colored attacks, so you have to switch over to a secondary purple fire to eliminate them before you take a hit. When you destroy enemies, it dynamically unlocks a new layer for the stage's music until it eventually culminates into a wonderful explosion of both music and graphics by the end. Headphones are highly recommended for this one. Now, this game did advertise itself as better with Kinect, but honestly, it's nothing special. You just control this circle and fire with hand gestures. That's all you get to do with the Kinect. And besides, the game was long in development before the Kinect even existed and plays just fine with a controller. You can probably pick up Child of Eden for under $10, and it's hands down one of the best looking games to come out for the 7th generation of consoles, and it's totally worth your time. It's one of those games that you have to experience for yourself to truly understand what it's going for, and I hope you do. Asura's Wrath was developed by CyberConnect 2 and published by Capcom in 2012. It's not available on the PC, but it is backwards compatible with the series line of consoles. Asura's Wrath was somewhat of a divisive title upon release. Critics were dismissive of the cinematic presentation with a focus on cutscenes and QTEs. They also noted how the true ending was paid DLC. Overall, the general consensus was Asura's Wrath was a thrilling interactive anime showcase that had batshit crazy style going for it, but it ultimately did not justify the $60 price point, and it sold poorly as a result. All fair assessments, but personally, I was late to the party on this one, and I picked it up for under $10, so my perspective is a tad more forgiving. Asura's Wrath is a blend of a few different genres. It's part shoot 'em up, part brawler, and part cinematic action. You play as Asura, who is part of this council of guardians who serve to protect humanity from a dark force known as Goma. A lot of the story has its roots in Hinduism, and the guardians are attempting to cleanse the world, which is known as Gaia, of the impure demons. A lot of crazy things go down in the introductory episodes. For example, Asura is framed for the murder of the emperor. Then his wife is murdered, his daughter is kidnapped, and then he's exiled into limbo. In a nutshell, this is a revenge-centered plot, and Asura is given plenty of reason to lay down his mighty wrath later on. What's interesting is that the story is divided into 22 episodes and is somewhat structured like an anime. You're even shown previews of what's to come and are able to customize things like the bumper screens in between episodes. At no point does this game attempt to hide that it is trying to be an over-the-top crazy anime with insane logic-bending power struggles between galactic gods. Now granted, the gameplay is lacking, with most of the action sequences framed around building up Asura's burst gauge to trigger the next phase, with few deviations from that formula, but I still feel you get an incredible entertainment value to compensate for the lack of gameplay, especially when it comes to the sheer insanity of the final episodes. Looking at the current day user reviews and the reception towards Asura's Wrath, it's a far different story than how it was treated at launch. The tide has certainly turned in a more favorable direction towards Asura's Wrath, as the modern-day AAA gaming landscape is inundated with cinematic games, so perhaps the biggest sin committed here was being a little ahead of its time. If you can pick up a copy of Asura's Wrath for under $10, and heck, even throw $5 towards the DLC, you are gonna get your money's worth. I wish Capcom would re-release this on modern-day consoles, but the backwards compatibility here is solid on the Series X. If you're a fan of stuff like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or Fist of the North Star, you're gonna feel right at home with Asura's Wrath. Operation Darkness was developed by Success and published by Atlus in 2008. It still is an exclusive to the 360 and is not backwards compatible, which is kind of a shame because it's one of the least optimized titles I've played on this platform, and it needs all the help it can get. Operation Darkness is a tactical squad-based RPG that's set during World War II, presented as a muddy-looking PS2 title with anime protagonists and absolutely no respect for the Dead behind this one. Initially, I was drawn to Operation Darkness after downloading a demo for it back in the day and finding out the protagonist could turn into a werewolf to kill Nazis and zombies. This small slice of the game I played seemed promising, but the full game could never live up to the premise. You play as Edward, a member of Wolfpack, a special operations team led by James Gallant. You see, Edward gets injured during a battle, and James gives him an on-the-spot blood transfusion. Turns out, James was a werewolf and gave Edward some werewolf blood, and now Edward has newfound werewolf powers. There's also this whole plotline about Hitler using black magic to summon zombies and then working side by side with vampires during World War II. From the surface view of this game, it sounds really cool and it doesn't take itself too seriously. The problem is, the game is so frustrating to play that you'll likely call it quits before any of the cool supernatural stuff happens at all. The presentation here is rough all around. It often has issues maintaining a consistent frame rate, even when there's little action going on. The camera sweeps around at odd angles during the turns, often obscuring the view of the action. The maps are stupidly large, and you'll often have a hard time determining what is in range. Your team members cannot pass through each other, and you can accidentally create a roadblock for yourself, and you'll have to wait it out to move your characters to get through them. But my biggest gripe of all with Operation Darkness is how unforgiving it is when it comes to the losing conditions. For many of the early missions, you're required to use members of the Wolf Pack in each battle. You get no say in the matter. If any one of these members fall in battle, it's an instant game over, no chance for recovery or assistance, you're done. Then, you're placed back at the start of the intro to the mission and forced to watch all the cutscenes over again, which you can somewhat fast forward through, but not skip entirely. It wastes a stupid amount of your time. They'll also do BS things like lay down landmines with no discernible way to determine where they are on the map, so if you accidentally step on one, instant game over. This level in particular is the worst offender. After you take out this whole squad of Nazis, presumably depleting most of your resources from trying not to die, around 20 or so Nazi zombies will then spawn in and steamroll you. I've played this mission multiple times, and if your squad is anywhere near the spawn zone for the zombies, you'll get overwhelmed in the first turn, forcing a game over. I gave this game a genuine try for hours and hours to be fun, but it's just not. It's not worth the hassle when there are better tactical RPGs on the system that I could be playing. This is one of the rare North American 360 games that you can find, but it's totally not worth the price of admission. This one belongs in the history books for all the wrong reasons.
Wait, there he is! The attempt was unsuccessful, sir. Hitler is still alive.
I thought this might happen. Damn. Next time you have him in your scope, I want you to shoot.
Yes, sir. I missed.
What just happened? It's like he bent the air around him.
Ilomilo, developed by Southend Interactive and published by Microsoft Game Studios in 2010. This is a digital-only Xbox exclusive that has been made backwards compatible with the series line of consoles. This is a really cute puzzle platformer that I enjoyed playing back in the day, and it was nice to revisit it for this video. You play as both Ilo and Milo, who you can switch between with the press of the button, and the goal here is to reunite the separated friends so they can hug it out and then go to the next level. Some of the best games have the simplest of premises. The game is incredibly clever. You pick up random blocks and use them to create platforms across gaps or punch holes in the floor so you can drop through and go on the underside of the level. You really do have to pay attention to the three-dimensional rotation of the map itself to kind of plan out your routes to reunite the pair. Along the way, you're gonna meet some odd characters and learn a really dark story about this guy named the Huntsman announcement that's sort of a wraparound tale that goes in tandem with the gameplay. There are a lot of collectibles and eggs to find within each map. You can also find vinyl records that are a piece of the soundtrack or hidden notes throughout that tell a bit more of the story. It's got this great patchwork quality to the level design that you might find within Little Big Planet. It's just warm, inviting, and relaxing to play. I don't have a single complaint about this game. It's perfect for what it is. It was also kind of a love letter to indie games. You'll notice a few references here and there to other indie games like World of Goo, Super Meat Boy, Machinarium. Odd fact, singer Billie Eilish apparently loves this game and named one of her songs after it. It's always cool to see an obscure game get shouted out in the mainstream, I guess. It's a puzzle game that just about anyone could appreciate. Check it out. This is Quantum Theory, developed by Team Tachyon and published by Tecmo in 2010. This was exclusive to the 7th generation of consoles, never released on PC, and will probably never get a future port. This was a game that I would encounter multiple times in video game stores, but never once picked it up to figure out what it was all about. This was created by Makoto Shibata, the creator of the Fatal Frame series, who's never put out a bad Fatal Frame game, so I imagine this wouldn't be terrible. So what is Quantum Theory? Well, the best way I could describe it is Japanese Gears of War, but not as polished, exciting, or unique in any particular way. Essentially, it's a third-person cover shooter on a platform that's saturated with that kind of content. You play as a big ogre named Sid.
Inspected!
Name's Sid.
Who lives in this post-apocalyptic world where these giant living towers invade, and Sid's on a mission to climb all these towers and destroy the core of these towers so all the evil demons and shit will get eliminated. You also get this girl named Nyx as a partner that you can throw, and she'll do attacks at all the little demons that are inhabiting the map. Each of the towers has its own immune system, and I think that's all the demons you see, and you're the virus coming in to destroy it, so there's some sort of analogy to be made there. It's not a terrible game per se. You do get a nice variety of guns you would come to expect out of a game in this genre. Sniper rifles, grenade launchers, shotguns, handguns. And you have somewhat of a melee attack as well. But the gunplay just doesn't feel as satisfying as something like Gears of War. The overall gameplay is super slow. I guess I've just been spoiled by Vanquish over the years. When I was playing this, I just kept thinking, man, I really want to be playing Vanquish instead. I would recommend that over Quantum Theory, but if you're looking for something that's drab and gray with not much humor or entertainment behind it, just a complete flat line of a third-person shooter, then yeah, Quantum Theory is your game. I only played 7 hours of this one, and I bet at the 8th hour there's something really cool there. I guess I'll never know.
Who's next?
Eliminate
Another down.
This is Shadows of the Damned, developed by Grasshopper Manufacture and butchered by Electronic Arts in 2011. Currently, this game is exclusive to the 7th generation of consoles, but it was recently made backwards compatible with the series line of Xbox consoles. But keep in mind, it has been delisted from the Microsoft Store, so you're going to need a disc if you want to play it. What else can I say about Shadows of the Damned other than it's one of my favorite games to come out of the 7th generation? I made a whole feature-length documentary about this game on my channel, which delves into all the development woes and what the game could have been, and also appreciates it for what it ended up becoming. Shadows of the Damned is probably most well known for the Dream Team collaboration between Suda51, Shinji Mikami, and Akira Yamaoka, or that its gameplay is a direct parody of Resident Evil 4 by the creator of Resident Evil 4, with a charismatic buddy cop road trip movie vibe to it. Each time I've played through this game, I find something new to appreciate about it, and 10 years later, I think it's held up fairly well. You play as Garcia Hotspur, who's hellbound on rescuing his girlfriend Paola with the aid of his magic talking skull slash phallic reference slash best friend, Johnson, on their road trip to the top of Fleming's Tower. It's not a Suda game unless you're climbing some sort of tower.
Are you sure we should press on?
I'm a Mexican, Johnson, not a Mexicant.
Bravo, G! Highly original!
This is a third-person shooter that's a bit more creative than most you'll play. Hell is infested with shadowy demons, and the way to remove their armor or progress through the level is to introduce light to the scene. The game truly emphasizes the contrast between light and darkness, and all of the puzzles are centered around how to introduce light to the stage, because the heroes cannot survive in the shadows as it drains their life force. Even though you're only given a limited amount of weapons throughout the game, the gunplay is still spectacular, and Shadows does carry the torch of the fundamentals found within Resident Evil 4 by keeping a tight pace and fun boss battles. In my Shadows retrospective, I noted that the Xbox 360 version of Shadows of the Damned not only performed better, but had higher fidelity audio. The PS3 version has noticeably worse audio than the 360 version, and that's a shame because Akira Yamaoka put so much love and care into this soundtrack that it's nearly on the same level as his work on Silent Hill. It feels like a lost Silent Hill game soundtrack. As of a couple of years ago, Grasshopper reacquired this IP, so there is a chance of a remaster of Shadows of the Damned coming out in the near future, or at least a new entry in the franchise. Recently, Grasshopper Manufacture did include Shadows in No More Heroes Travis Strikes Again, so it seems as if there's some Shadows-related content still simmering in the pot. Shadows of the Damned comes with my highest recommendation. If you go into it with an open mind and a sense of humor, you're gonna walk away loving it.
You know I found Paula in a dumpster, right?
What? You said you met her at the supermarket.
I did. It was the bin out behind the dime a dozen.
And you just picked her up out of the rubbish and brought her home?
Why no?
Sometimes I think I hardly know you. I don't know, but we've got company, as in lots of.
Well, if they pull up a chair, I would be happy to beat them with it.
No More Heroes, Heroes Paradise was ported by Feel Plus in 2010. You're gonna need a modded Xbox to play this, as this is one of the few Japanese 360 games with a region lock. I'm not sure why this 360 version never made it west, because it did come over on the PlayStation 3, and speaking as somebody who beat the entire game on the PS3, it's kind of a miserable experience on that platform. The game is plagued with screen tearing and frame drops and all sorts of glitches. If you're not desperate enough to struggle through Heroes Paradise on the PS3, then the 360 version is the way to go, I guess, as it doesn't seem to share in those issues. Okay, so Heroes Paradise is somewhat of an HD remaster of the original No More Heroes, with some added content thrown in and a few boss fights from No More Heroes 2 as bonus missions. You may have trouble because the menus and text are still in Japanese, but all of the cutscenes are in English. So if you've played No More Heroes before, you might be able to navigate through the game just fine regardless. No More Heroes is the tale of the otaku assassin Travis Touchdown, who is trying to climb the ranks of the United Assassins Association by killing all the big players up top in the race to become rank number 1. It's somewhat of an open world hack and slash brawler with all the bizarre pseudoisms thrown in that you've come to expect from Grasshopper Manufacture, namely Mexican wrestling and anime references galore. The original No More Heroes has now been ported to pretty much everything, and the 360 version of Heroes Paradise is probably not the best way to experience this game for the first time. I mean, you'd really have to be dedicated and go out of your way to mod your Xbox 360 and import a Japanese copy of Heroes Paradise for some tiny little YouTube segment and a video about 360 games if you really wanted to. But if you're a No More Heroes completionist and you have to have every single version of it, then yeah, import this one. It's No More Heroes on the 360. Where else are you gonna see that? Released in April of 2012 by Suda51's Grasshopper Manufacture, Diabolical Pitch is an Xbox 360 Kinect exclusive to this very day. You take on the role of Nigel McAllister, an ace pitcher that injures his pitching arm during the big game. This puts McAllister into an early retirement, and he becomes depressed. Whilst browsing the web for a solution to his problems, he comes across a website for Queen Christine's Dreamland, where all your dreams come true. Nigel rationally decides to take his chances at a magical theme park to fix his broken shoulder instead of dealing with the hassles of the American healthcare system. Can you blame him? When he gets there, he's given a magic arm by a talking cow and told to make his way up to the castle on the hill to get his wish from Queen Christine. It's a Grasshopper game, what did you expect? Diabolical Pitch is a carnival-style shooting gallery game. You aim with the baseball glove and pitch with your throwing arm. The goal is to knock out all of the horrific animal mascots that are coming to kill you, and pick up various slot machine icons to raise your score. Nigel has a meter that builds up during gameplay, where he can unleash a room-clearing Diabolical Pitch. There are a few different kinds of pitches to unlock, just pick your favorite. Sometimes enemies will pitch projectiles at you, so you have to take a catching stance to prevent taking a hit. The gameplay is fairly repetitive and tiresome after extended play, but remember, the story here is predicated on the protagonist hurting their shoulder, so this is a feeling the player will begin to empathize with after participating in a few levels. This is what we call in the business of games, immersion. Now there's a surprising amount of collectibles to find and a full-on skill tree to spin your points on if you want to develop Nigel's skills. For a throwaway Kinect game, there's a surprising amount of content in there, but I found one playthrough was enough for me. By the way, this game also includes a cooperative mode. I actually went through it the first time with a friend, and we had a great time. So is it worth it to play Diabolical Pitch in the modern day? Yeah, I guess, if you want to catch the one reference in Travis Strikes Again. But considering that this is a digital-only Kinect game, there's a good chance that it may get delisted in the future. For $10, it's worth checking out. Get it while you can. This is Ninja Blade, developed by From Software, the creators of Dark Souls, and published by Microsoft Game Studios in 2009. This was an Xbox exclusive at the time of release, but it did get a later PC port. I wish Microsoft would have made it part of their backwards compatibility program because the game could have really benefited from it. Regardless, let's take a look at it for what it is. The game is a third-person Devil May Cry-like action game that reminded me a lot of the PlayStation 2 Shinobi game, primarily because it has a lot of weird biomutants and parasite-infected creatures, and it has some of the most gross and disgusting creature designs that I've seen, but it's not really surprising because this came from some of the same artists found in the Soul series, and they're really known for their over-the-top creature design. I love it. In the game, you play as Weeaboo Ninja Ken Ogawa, who works for a special ninja forces operation that are on a mission to control the worm outbreak. Ken's team, which includes his father, get infected by these worms, they betray him, try to murder him, but he narrowly survives, and he takes the fabled ninja blade out of his body and uses it to cut his way through vomit-inducing monsters on his quest for revenge and to stop the outbreak. If you've played Ninja Gaiden before, you'll be right at home here. You run around, you strike things, you parry things, you dodge, roll out of the way. A major strike against Ninja Blade is its insistent use of QuickTime events at every turn, which are over the top in the same way Metal Gear Solid the Twin Snakes were, where you're riding on missiles and other ridiculous things to defeat gargantuan parasite creatures. Although the QuickTime events are an annoying frequent occurrence, they're forgiving enough because if you fail one, it will rewind time and allow you to do the QuickTime sequence again until you pass. So it's not all that bad. This was my first time playing Ninja Blade, and I had a great time. They provide a respectable amount of weapons to try out and switch between on the fly to make stylish combos. There's a hilarious amount of costume customization for Ken. You can make him look like a walking ninja watermelon if you want to. And the overall feel of the game is lighthearted if a little gross. Those are the kind of games I tend to gravitate to. As I mentioned, this game could have really benefited from backwards compatibility. The performance is all over the place, totally not optimized for the Xbox 360. In some cases, you're going to be seeing the frame rate drop down to sub 10, especially during some of the boss fights. There's screen tearing galore and the textures do look a little bit muddy, which does make some of From Software's more awesome spectacles look worse than usual. If you're willing to look past bad performance and an overabundance of QTEs, you'll have a blast with the gameplay and maybe a laugh or two along the way. Ninja Blade is for a special kind of gamer, and it's certainly found its audience with me.
Andy! Oh man, should have stayed in bed this morning.
Andy, I'm sorry.
Just the three of us now, Ken. You going to be stupid like the others? Or will you join us?
Join you? I don't even know who you are anymore.
Released in the summer of 2012 by From Software, Steel Battalion Heavy Armor is a Kinect exclusive left on the 360. Some of you might recall the first couple of Steel Battalions, which were exclusive to the original Xbox, and notable for the elaborate $200 mech pilot controller. Now, the appeal of the first games were limited to a select few enthusiasts who paid the hefty price tag for the whole setup, and in modern times, it'll cost collectors upwards of $400 if they want to experience the original two games, so most people will likely pass. From Software wanted to create a more accessible game, and they went back to the drawing board to eliminate the cost by making use of the Kinect sensor for Heavy Armor to varying degrees of success. In the game, you are a pilot of a vertical tank, or VT for short. There's a whole plot about some microbe epidemic that's eating all the processors and digital technology in the world. It's not that important. All you need to know is that the military has to rely on old mechanized vehicles, which require 4 pilots to operate. As a sergeant, you're primarily tasked for operating the movement of the VT and commanding your crew to handle the weapons operations. This game is kind of strange. It requires you to be seated in a chair, just like being in a pilot seat, but you'll also occasionally need to stand up to look through a hatch.
Your head might get shot the moment you pop it on out there.
This is the rare Kinect game that utilizes both the controller and the Kinect at the same time. Now, I won't lie to you, there is quite a learning hurdle to overcome before you can start enjoying Steel Battalion. The most important thing is getting your Kinect gestures figured out early on. The best way to play is to overdo the gestures by fully pushing out your arms in the direction you want your character to go. There are a couple of layers of viewpoints inside the cockpit and different control boards or levers to manipulate. I would recommend running the tutorial level a couple of times to fully get the hang of the movement. Once you get a feel for the VT controls, it becomes one of the wildest rides on the Kinect. You'll be engaging with other VTs, which will fire artillery rounds at you, causing the cabin to explode into flames, which you'll need to put out. You can also close the steel shutter to protect it from hits and look through the periscope or search on your radar to find nearby enemy locations. Sometimes one of your crew members will panic and you'll need to slap them around a bit to get them back into the fight. There's a lot of chaotic movement, flip switching, and fast thinking you'll have to do as the sergeant. Trust me, you'll die a bunch early on when learning these controls, but with mastery comes the fun. Surprisingly, From Software sprinkled in a lot of relationship building between your squad mates. Just some funny moments here and there where you bond with the other pilots and sometimes take control of them.
Hey, you never know when the MREs are gonna stop coming in. A little reward for our big score back on the beach.
What would you know about scoring, Natch?
Hey, fuck you! I'm not a virgin, and who started that rumor anyway?
For certain stages, there are some online cooperative levels where you and an online team can take out enemy radar or other VTs. But if I'm being upfront, the game never really had an active community to begin with since it was so critically panned at launch that you may have trouble finding anyone else to play this with you. After playing this game for a few hours, the frustration just began to fade, and I was getting rather engaged with the idiosyncratic control style. This is not a game for everyone, but it can be had for under $5, so it's totally worth it for the novelty of trying a higher than average Kinect game from one of the most prolific developers in the mech genre. I didn't get the impression From Software phoned it in with this one, more so that they tried their best given the limitations of the Kinect 1.0, and had this been delayed for the Xbox One and the Kinect 2.0, I could see Steel Battalion Heavy Armor becoming a killer app for this accessory. Hikiko says, check it out.
On these scopes. They all fucked up, man.
All right.
The ranch is on.
Nice. Good job.
Shit. Nice, man.
Lift up your hand if you want to stow the periscope.
Outstanding. That's it for maneuvers, boys.
Now it's time to talk about the Xbox's best exclusives, the Burger King games, also known as the King games. Developed by Blitz Games and released with a value meal, the King games have a unique distinction of being a cross-generational title, meaning that you can pop this disc into your Xbox original and play it, or you can take the disc, put it in a 360, and it will play a 360 variant of the same game with higher quality textures, a higher resolution, and better frame rates. Both versions are included on the discs. That's something that Xbox still hasn't been able to figure out with smart delivery in the modern era. The King games were well ahead of their time. In total, there are 3 different King games. Sneak King, where you play as Burger King protagonist The King, and a stealth-based survival horror, where the King sneaks up on various people to deliver them food before they pass out due to low blood sugar, probably from from eating too much Burger King and becoming a pre-diabetic. Then there's Big Bumpin', which is a carnival-themed bumper car elimination kind of game, tangentially related to Burger King, but not really. And finally, there's Pocket Bike Racer, which features actor/model Brooke Burke on the cover of the game. Now, I looked into why Brooke Burke was featured in both Big Bumpin' and Pocket Bike Racer. Apparently, there was some sort of viral marketing where the Burger King and Brooke Burke were hooking up in secret, and they tried to make it some big tabloid thing, but really, it comes out as kind of disturbing overall. So yes, canonically, Brooke Burke was hooking up with the Burger King, and therefore she appears in a children's game. That's it. That's the story. So Pocket Bike Racer is a racing game in the vein of Mario Kart, where you take one of these oversized characters and you put them on a tiny bike and you have them race around in arenas like the Burger King parking lot or the Tender Crisp Bacon Cheddar Ranch Fantasyland. You can build up this bar on the right and use it to boost around or pull out one of the game's many weapons. In terms of ranking the King games, I would say Sneak King is my favorite. I find it to have a very dark and weird sense of humor. Really plays into how creepy the mascot of the Burger King is. You can even do a bizarre first person through the mask look and stalk all the different people on the map or hide in objects and pop out. It does get fairly intense when you're trying to get the high score and sneak up on people without entering their field of vision. Many years ago, my friends and I actually 100%ed this game and unlocked the hidden sneaking suit, which at the time no one had ever captured on video. Here's a clip of that.
Yes!
All black.
I was right. All black.
What's the difference?
It was worth it.
Next up is Pocket Bike Racer. Now, this is a very janky racing game, but for being an ultra-low budget racing game, it's passable. A lot of the maps are reskins of the ones found in Sneak King, but the drifting and boost mechanics are surprisingly solid, and you won't have too much trouble placing in first. I feel that anyone could sit down and appreciate this for what it was. It's not terrible, it's not great, it's just in the middle. That's why it's number 2. And in third place goes Big Bumpin'. Now, don't get me wrong, this is an interesting concept to have a bumper car elimination challenge. The problem is the enemies have crazy rubber band AI, and they will often take the lead. Like, they always know where the beam of light is going to be when it comes to the capture the flag like games, and they all seem to gang up on you whenever you're trying to do the bumper elimination maps. It does have a few different game modes, but none of them are particularly fun. But I will say it does lean into the carnival theme quite well, with the level designs modeling that of some carnival attractions with big dragons and yetis and things like that. I wish I could say that this one was fun. It's not, but what could I expect from a value meal video game? Regardless, these games are super cheap to pick up, and they're a nice novelty to have as a conversation piece in your Xbox collection. And with this video, I have now concluded my series of 7th generation video game console video essays. I hope you've enjoyed these retrospectives. I have 3 others like it on the channel. I have one on the PS3, on the Nintendo Wii, and the Wii U, which is kind of between the 7th and 8th generation. People seem to like it anyway. So, thanks for watching. My name's Hikiko. Subscribe to the channel, Hikikomori Media. Thumb the video, either one, and leave a comment down below. I'll see y'all next time.